All right, UFC Fight Night, Namajunas versus Ribas just wrapped up last night, and I thought it was a pretty exciting night of fights. Like, there were some really good fights on this card, and the first thing I want to talk about is what's being coined as the bite of the night in the fight between Igor Severino and Andre Lima. So this fight is really competitive, and the thing that's crazy about it, right, is that I feel like Severino is winning the fight and on his way to winning the fight. Like, he's starting to control the grappling exchanges. I felt like you were starting to see Lima slow down a little bit more in the second round. But there were some questionable things that Lima was doing, right? Like, he almost played with grabbing the fence at one point. He definitely had his fingers in it. Near groin strikes and stuff like that. And I think that, I don't know. It's so hard to tell what was going through his head. I just don't understand the why. So if you guys didn't see it, you got to look it up. But Severino is on like a body lock, basically. He's got his hands around the hips, shoving Lima up against the cage, and he bites the back of his arm, right? Which is crazy because you're in an advantageous position. You had been winning the second round, and I understand that maybe it's a frustrating fight. I don't know if, Severino thought that maybe this was going to be like a blowout on his end. Like, maybe he thought he was more skilled than this guy. I don't know if he was frustrated that the guy was still there hanging around when he didn't think he would be. I have no idea, if you listen back to the audio too, I just watched the fight back this morning, you can hear the referee saying he was warned for that. That doesn't give you a reason to bite. So I think that Severino was trying to make the argument that Lima had committed several fouls throughout the fight, and that was what he was doing, was like retaliating. But it's like, that can't be a retaliation. Like, also, just let your martial arts go out and speak for themselves. Like, go win the fight. Like, if you feel that this guy's cheating, just go out and beat him without dropping to that level. And he didn't just drop to his level. He sunk way, way below it, right? I mean, now you're talking about your future with the UFC is in jeopardy, right? I know he's cut from the UFC as a result of this, but I'm talking about he's only 20 years old. And you feel like if you're him, you've got to be thinking, did I just blow my opportunity to ever fight in the UFC again? And I'll tell you what, man, watching that young man fight last night, super impressive. Super impressive. For only being 20 years old, he is very fucking well polished. It was a great fight, and just for that to happen, man, it's disappointing because you got to think like and this starts reminding me of stuff like other fighters who have been banned from the UFC. Like, remember when Roy Nelson, but usually it involves like touching a referee or something, right? Like, Roy Nelson was only suspended for 9 months. He didn't get punished for, pushing McCarthy, but it usually, whatever your offense is, it has to be egregious is what I'm saying. Like, you got to touch a ref. Like, the most notable ones that come to mind are obviously Paul Ares, right? Holding onto the heel hook for too long and then being cut. Then he did it again later over in World Series of Fighting. It was previously called PFL now. And Paul Daly, after the bell, and Dana White said, "You're gone, never fighting here again." Dana White literally said, like, Paul Daly could become the best pound for pound fighter in the world, travel the world, do whatever, fight for every promotion, and he'll never fight for the UFC again. So when you have egregious fuck-ups like this and egregious fouls, Dana White tends to punish you pretty strictly for them. So it'll be interesting to see if down the line this young man is ever given a chance to fight in the UFC again. Because at 20 years old, man, I don't know. If you got to feel like going into this fight, you're undefeated. You're on your way to winning. You're just gonna maybe stay undefeated, get a very notable fight after this because of the performance, and you do something like that. Fuck, you might have just fucked up your whole career, man. It's crazy. But I don't know. I have like a feeling that this might not be as egregious as like the punch after the bell. It was for, I don't know. We'll see. It was pretty fucking blatant though. Like, if you look at the bite mark on it, it's pretty severe. It just makes me sad because like someone like Daly was a little further along into his career, right? Same thing with guys like Roy Nelson only got suspended, but Palares, like, they know better. And not that this kid doesn't know better. He's 20, but he is only 20, right? So I don't know. You're an idiot when you're 20. I'm an idiot now and I'm 30. But anyway, very interesting, right? It was a great fucking fight. I thought it was on its way to being the fight of the night, but just, disappointing result for Severino. And, man, I don't know what the path forward for him is going to look like, but it's probably going to be in like a Bellator or PFL type promotion. And then how hard is it to get back across the line into the UFC. I don't know. We'll see, but disappointing for sure. But moving on, there were some good fights on the prelims, right? Miles Johns kind of beat up on Cody Gibson over the course of 3 rounds. How about Arosa? Julian Arosa, man, just consummate veteran. But Ricardo Ramos was beating him up. He was beating him up to start, right? Like he hit him with a big knee, hurt him. Arosa got back up. And if you get a guillotine is a rare submission to find in MMA as it is. And to get submitted with it twice in a row when you're as talented as Ramos appears to be, man, I don't know. Something's got to be done there. I mean, not that Julian Arosa isn't a talented submission artist, but making the same mistake twice like that at the UFC level can be career-changing in a lot of ways. And I don't know. There's got to be some things that Ramos clears up moving forward. But for Julian Arosa, what a fucking win. And what a way to battle back after getting hurt early and to lock that up. Impressive win from the veteran. But moving to the main card here, right? Fernando Padilla beat up on Luis Pajuelo. I hope I'm pronouncing these right, guys. Fuck, I don't know. Fernando Padilla, though, beat up on Luis Pajuelo. And this is one of those fights when I thought coming into it that this had real fight of the night potential. Because I kind of felt like, I don't know, I didn't think either guy had a ton of power, but I felt like they might get into a war because Pajuelo loves a scrap. Like in every single fight that you watch him, he's always marching forward. He loves to throw down in the pocket. And I thought he might be able to I thought he was going to have a little bit of trouble getting past Padilla's range at first, but I thought that his toughness and his ability to endure would just kind of eventually get him on the inside, and these two would end up having like a barn burner fight. But really, from start to finish, it was a dominant performance from Padilla. He did a great job of controlling the range. He never gave Pajuelo opportunities to get inside, and he dominated from, the time the fight opened up really until he locked up the Darsh. So super impressive performance from Padilla. And I think that he's a guy who you're looking at him and he's got a lot of talent. And I think he's a fun guy to watch, uses his kicks really effectively and everything. I think that he's going to get a little bit of a higher profile matchup the next time we see him fight in the octagon. So especially doing that on the main card, that was a big win for him. Another big win, Youssef Salal returning back to the UFC. He started off with some good success in the UFC. I think he won 2 or 3 fights in a row. I can't remember, but then he dropped 3 in a row and was released, right? Gets back on kind of like the regional circuit. He's fighting in, I forget the name of it, but it's like a smaller, maybe Sparta Combat in Colorado, a smaller Colorado-based promotion. Picks up 3 wins there, and he looked like he had jumped levels up. Not a level or 2. Like, he outclassed Billy Quarantillo, and he did it impressively. He was super efficient, just very composed on the feet, and there was never a moment where you felt like Billy was really able to start mounting any type of success at all, really. You know? It felt like it felt like Zalal has turned a corner. And like I said, he's ascended to that next level. And I think one of those guys who, looking at him earlier on in his UFC career before he was cut, thinking he had a lot of potential, and then you drop 3 in a row, it's tough. But this is why, though, this is a perfect example of like why, if you are a young fighter, it is not necessarily a bad thing to take a step back from the UFC if you're not finding that success yet. Because if the potential's there, and you keep fighting these high-level guys or these fights where you're just barely getting by, you're never building the confidence, but you're also never building the skills that you need, right? Like you're not finding that, you're not getting that fight experience and, like finding that success. And I think that him dropping back down to a smaller promotion where, yes, he's probably more skilled than most of his opponents, right? But it is just about getting back on track. It's about the decision-making and refining all of that before you step up to the UFC level. And last night, man, Youssef Zalal's decision-making was top fucking notch. Super impressive victory from him. I think I'm going to try to get a breakdown out on the rear naked choke because Billy Q he's a gangster, man. Like he's tough. He's a tough guy to get out of there. You can like dot him up on the feet a little bit, but normally his grappling is he gives guys problems. I feel like he just does a good job of turning it into a fight, right? And Zalal was in complete control last night. Super impressive from him. there are a lot of fights on this card where it's kind of like you look at it and go, man, it's kind of hard to pick the performance of the night, because I thought Shabazian's performance was great. I thought that Peyton Talbot, who we're going to talk about next, his performance was great. Padilla looked good. Man, just a bunch of good fights on this card, right? But moving on to the next one, Peyton Talbot versus Cameron Simon. Every time I say Simon, I think of fucking Dragon Ball Z, the little, what does it say? Simon? I don't know, but I think of the little Saiyamen from fucking DBZ that that Vegeta and Nappa bring with them. But anyway, Peyton Talbot was on fire last night. And it's crazy because, we've seen him in his UFC debut have a little bit of a slow start in the first round and then kind of pick up momentum a little bit in the second and third. I mean, he did land a lot in his Dana White Contender Series fight. Obviously broke the record for the most significant strikes thrown in the bantamweight division in a single fight in the Contender Series, right? A lot of clarifying to do there, but he just looked so good last night. Like everything he was throwing was landing. And after Cameron weathered the early storm, I thought Cameron was going to be able to get back on the bike a little bit, start finding some success of his own. And he was finding mild success, but every time he would step into throw man, Peyton just had an answer. He was dropping him constantly. And we have got to talk about the ability of Cameron to eat a shot. I mean, he ate some fucking bombs. He ate that knee up against the cage. I don't know, man. But if you look at Talbot, he is as, oh my goodness, what's her name? As Laura Sanko obviously said last night on the broadcast, like he is that guy. And he looked super impressive last night. He is a prospect to watch out for, man. Because I thought Simon, I think it's Simon. I think Simon is a really good prospect as well, and I thought he was going to win this fight. I thought he'd have a little bit of advantage in the grappling department. I thought he might hunt for takedowns more. I kind of thought that if they started boxing, Peyton might have an advantage, but I thought Cameron was going to move more and maybe over the course of the fight start finding openings of his own. But, Peyton just stayed on him the entire time. And also, like I said, Simon, I thought after he weathered that storm, Talbot, that pressure would start to fade a little bit, and it never did. He just stayed on top of it the whole time. Before we move on and talk about the Shabazian fight, though, we got on Laura Sanko. I feel like we got to take a minute and talk about how good she's been doing as a commentator. I feel like she's so good at picking up on what's happening in the fight. She's giving you an accurate depiction of it. She knows her fucking shit. And I think that she's right up there with all of the other commentators. She has no problem hanging there with Felder, Bisping, any of those guys. She's just as good as all the guys, and she's better than some of the other guys. I won't get into who personally I like and don't like, but she does a great job. And I think that it's, I think that if you want a representative for women doing that, they couldn't have picked a better person, and she's been fucking crushing it, man. So that's been if you're a woman, you got to be excited about that, especially if you're a female fighter and you're watching all of these male fighters find success in the broadcasting industry and getting onto the desk and being able to call fights. That seems to be, if you are good on the microphone, that's a valid path forward for you, right? But if you're not, man, it's tough. But if you are, you want that opportunity. And I think that Laura Sanko is proving to these women out there that there's a path forward in this industry. If you feel like you're gifted on the mic and you put the work in, you can do it. And I think that she's setting an example for future women who are fighting in the organization right now. So it's great to see. But anyway, moving on here, Edmund Shabazian over AJ Dobson. This is a fight where I did a breakdown on the combination that Shabazian threw, just a short one, 3 or 4 minutes. But this is a win that Edmund Shabazian needed. Really needed. I feel like he needed to pick up a big finish here, and he's one of those guys who, when you watch him fight, he's super talented. I actually think he's a really good grappler. I think he's a well-rounded martial artist. But for whatever reason, whether it's decision-making or just he just has had trouble finding success in the UFC. He's dropped multiple fights in a row, but he's getting back on track now, and I think a big win like this could kind of give him that confidence that he needs to start. He's definitely a UFC caliber fighter. I just feel like he's just had difficult moments in the octagon, if that makes sense. But he picked up a big win last night after getting hurt early. Early on, it looked like Dobson was going to win this fight. But Shabazian was able to stay composed. He worked to the takedown. Did end up getting swept, but just stayed with it, man. And when they got up to the feet, threw a beautiful combo. Got a nice angle on Dobson, landed the left hand, and picked up the finish. And for Shabazian, that one was much needed. Carl Williams versus Justin Tafa. It just boils down to the wrestling, man. And Williams is an interesting cat because almost every fight in his professional career has gone to a decision. And at heavyweight, I feel like you don't see that all the time. And especially at like the UFC level, if you guys see new guys coming into the heavyweight division, it's normally because they're coming in because they can fucking crack. But Williams, man, he ate some bombs last night, landed some nice shots of his own, but Tafa's got that like, whatever. What is he? I don't know. Maori blood in him. He's like, you know what I mean? He's got that fucking chin, that big old noggin on him. It's going to be hard to knock that boy out. But Williams did a good job of it was a tough fight, man, but that's what you got to do against a guy like Tafa. You don't want to go blow for blow with a guy who can knock you out like that, who has that real knockout power. And Williams said after the fight, he was like, it fucking hurt. Like, yeah, it hurt, dude. Like, Tafa can throw. Williams took the correct path here, picked up a nice win, and he's going to keep on advancing. Right. And I think he's a really promising prospect, but we'll see. We'll see how things shake out. Big win for Carl Williams. All right. Rose Namajunas versus Amanda Ribas. This was a big win for Rose. And really what the difference maker was the wrestling, right? I mean, there were times where Ribas was able to throw Rose and take Rose down, but she could never maintain the positions. And Rose was always able to usually like come up on top and, or I don't know that Rose, I don't know, man. When I watched that fight last night, though, it felt like Rose was the much more skillful fighter, but Ribas, who was somebody who has fought at 115 pounds in the past, was so much bigger than her. It just felt like she was way stronger. And Ribas, her strategy was almost just to keep walking Rose down. And you could tell that when they got into exchanges, like I said, Namajunas had the better movement. She was landing the cleaner shots. She was landing shots that I feel like would have really hurt girls that were a little bit smaller, but Ribas was able to eat them. And you could also tell that when Ribas would land shots on Rose, it hurt Rose a lot more, right? It's like, man, I just don't know that Rose is a 125er. Like when you look at Manon Foyot, she is a 125er. There is no doubt about it. She is big. And Rose looked much more filled out in this fight. And this was a hard win, by the way. But I just don't know that Rose long-term is going to be able to, maybe not, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe she'll turn that corner. But I just feel like her frame and everything, if you look at the way that Ribas looked last night and her presence and her ability to keep pushing forward and kind of keeping Rose a little bit on the back foot, regardless of the fact that Rose was able to land. It looked difficult it looked like Rose was fighting an uphill battle, and her technique and her wrestling and everything was able to kind of dig her up out of that hole, like that disadvantage that she had in terms of size. But yeah, I don't know. I feel that she's a bit small for the weight class and that finding success at a championship level is going to be tough. Whereas Rose, in my opinion, is world championship caliber at 115. You know she is. She's done it several times, right? So we'll see. I don't know, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe she'll continue to fill out and put on a little bit more mass, right? Maybe build a little bit more muscle, but it just felt like Rose was cleaner, but Amanda was still able to like bully her at times. And even with the ground stuff, like Amanda would kind of take Rose down to the ground and Rose would just kind of roll her through or something and come up on top and be able to control that top positioning, right? She just did a good job of not overcommitting to everything. And like, I don't know. She just fought a really good fight from that perspective. But I worry that at the elite level of 125, it might be difficult for her against those bigger girls, right? So we'll see. It's going to be interesting also to see how Blanchfield and Manon play out when they fight coming up. So we'll see. Women's featherweight division is getting a little bit, not featherweight, flyweight division is getting a little bit interesting. But yeah, I'm going to hop off here, guys. Thank you as always for tuning in. If you guys can't tell, I'm rusty with this. I haven't eaten all these different, I just also worked, we have these quarterly events that we have to work where we take servers and it's like they're contingency events. We bring them up, we take them down somewhere, bring them up somewhere else, but it takes hours. So I feel like I've gotten like 10 hours of sleep over the last 3 days. So I'm like running on fumes. So thank you guys for hanging with me, right? Keep an eye out for I think I'm going to try to do a breakdown on the Yusuf Zalal submission that he hit. And like I said, I recorded one for the Shabazian one that I think turned out all right. So I'll try to get that edited and posted today and everything. But yeah, thank you guys as always for tuning in. Much appreciated. Have a great day. Bye-bye.